Alrighty, beautiful and strong people. Coach Alan here, and today we're going to talk about that moment in training when things just feel stupendously heavy out of nowhere. So, I'm talking about that moment that I know you've been into. I've been into. Coach Ben, Coach Stephanie, Coach Calvin has been in that situation when the block is running pretty smooth, but there is one particular session where, as you're warming up, things just feel way too heavy, heavier than they should be. And indeed, you can ask yourself, hey, is it poor sleep? Is it poor nutrition? Maybe it's the menstrual cycle for our females that is a little bit rougher than they should be. Or is it just a very long day, very stressful day that, we just don't have the mental capacity to be able to properly train? So what do we do about it so we still, turn this day into, to some degree, a productive day? Okay. I've talked about this concept of auto-regulating your training based on whether you're overshooting or undershooting, and I'm going to attach it in the comment section. But more so, I'm talking about the situation in which you just don't really have the signals there. So you're not feeling very fatigued, but it's just as you're warming up, things just feel much heavier than they should be. Okay, so one of the methods that I really like to use is clustering the top set. Now, this is going to require you to not overshoot as much. So, say you have programmed a triple at 320 for an RPE 8, but your last warm up is a double at 300 and it feels like an RPE 8. So, you kind of know that if you do the triple, it's not going to be an RPE 8. It's probably going to be like an RPE 9 and a 9.5. So, is it worth it to do that? You can pull back, do a 310, for example, for a triple and still be within RPE 8. But maybe you kind of need to touch this weight just so you can still build momentum throughout the block. So let's say you want to end the block at a 350 for a double, okay? And this 320 is going to really prime you for 350. So the solution is just break down the repetitions and put some rest in between them. Okay, so you're still taking 320, you're doing a single, maybe it's going to be within an RPE 7. You're resting for 20 seconds, 320 again, resting for 20 seconds, 320 again, and you should be ending up within an RPE 8, 8.5, within, the targeted, let's say, effort that you have for that day. Okay, so you would continue with your back downs, nothing changes, but breaking it down like this is giving you a lot more confidence. This rest in between helps you to keep your force production up, and as a result of that, you can still do these repetitions with at this load while mitigating to some degree the overall fatigue. Another way you can actually go about it, if the last warm-up is getting heavier, and you're going to see as we're going through the methods, the last warm-up is getting heavier and heavier. Okay, so it feels heavier and heavier than it should be. So we still have the program triple at the 320 around an RPE 8, and we have some back downs 250 for 3 sets of 4 around an RPE 6. Okay, so say your last warm-up is not necessarily an 8, but it's probably a little bit closer to a 9. Okay, you can take your top set and just do a single out of it. Okay, so you're still taking 320, but instead of actually doing a triple, you're doing a single. Okay, and you're pulling back from the back down. So instead of doing a 250, okay, you're doing 235. So this is the second method. You're turning the top set, instead of being a triple or whatever may it be, you're turning it into a single or a double if you have more repetitions. And in this manner, you're still having that intensity, but you're still within the prescribed RPE. Another method that I like to use is to just, take the top set as the last warm-up. Especially the last warm-up is, within an RPE 9. So if you have an RPE 8 program and your warm-up feels like an RPE 9, you know that you've already overshot from your last warm-up. So what do? Okay, this is going to be my top set. You're going to back down based on that, top set, let's say. And in this manner, you're still, you're not really ruining your day, but nor are you, skipping everything altogether. You're still getting some productive work in there. And the last one that I'm going to present to you guys, dynamic effort. This is going to be especially for those times in which your last warm-up turns into a max attempt. I know it's pretty hard to even conceptualize it, but it can happen. So let's say, your last warm up isn't even, a double at 300 for an RPE 9, but it's actually a single around an RPE 9. So you're like, oh, shit, this is hard. So what do you do about it? Should you skip the gym altogether? Well, the simple fact that you see that your last warm up it was so hard, you already know that your force production is quite diminished. Okay, so in that case, what I like to do is to address it directly at that spot. So I like to take anywhere around 55% to even 70% of my 1 rep max, and I would just do a couple of sets of triples with short rest in between and max intent on speed. So say at the moment it would be something like 200 for 6 sets of 3 repetitions with 45 seconds rest in between, and my intent to be as explosive as possible into those. So this is kind of waking me up to some degree. I'm still getting some productive work in there, and maybe it's actually better than just skipping the gym altogether, packing your bags and going. So these are the methods, a couple of methods that you can actually use. If you find yourself in such a situation, obviously we as coaches, we may potentially not be able to respond as promptly and tell you while you're on the session what to do. So I think these are going to be very valuable for you guys to just save your days when you're finding yourself in such a tough spot. I hope this is helpful. If you guys have any questions, or if you guys like to use any different methods to save the day, just leave them in the comment section, and we can open up a chat and see if we can come up with even more methods. Have a good one.